Hello, this is Anna Isabel Canhoto, and today I'm going to talk with you about how we can use social media to help us enhance our profile as researchers. Rather than talk about describe what each tool is or isn't, I'm going to talk about how we can use them to perform some of the functions of social media. So first I'd like to introduce this really great conceptual framework developed by Jan Kitzman and some colleagues over at BT School of Business in Canada. Essentially, this framework says that social media can perform several functions. One of them is to help you establish your identity. So that's the space here at the center of the framework. So in our particular case, social media can show to the world that you are academics and that you are interested in particular areas of research. Social media can also help you establish your presence. So you can use it to say that you are joining a particular conference or that you are joining a particular online discussion. Right? I'm going to mention that in a minute. It can also help you develop relationships with people with similar interests. This has perhaps been one of the areas that has been most beneficial for me. I've found extremely exciting and clever and interesting people on, say, Twitter or LinkedIn, and that we have similar interests. We've even worked together, but that it would have been extremely unlikely for us to meet in an offline world because we are in different countries or we go to different conferences, for instance. It can also help you establish your reputation, that is, to let others know what kind of things you're good at or that you have an interest on. And by this, I mean this in terms of actions, of what you share and what others share of you. So let me be more specific. Some people write in their profiles that they are the experts on whatever, on blankets, on marketing, social media marketing, or that they are the gurus, and there's nothing more off-putting than that. So that's not what I mean. What I mean is that if I write in my profile that I'm interested in social media marketing or blankets or customer profiling in my case, and through the content that I share, I constantly share content that's relevant for people working in marketing or interested in social media, and then others react to it and share it again and like the content and so on. So that shows to the external, to the outsiders, that that's what you are good at. You can also find groups of people with similar interests here, and so relationships is it with individuals, but regardless of interacting, just like as an academic you will go to a conference. So conference is a meeting of people with similar interests, and within this conference you will know some of them individually and you have relationships with individuals, but the group comes together to discuss a particular topic, and this can happen in the virtual world too. There are groups on, for instance, LinkedIn. There will be discussions in Twitter around an hashtag, so groups that come together to talk about academic writing or tourism or other areas. And you can, of course, have conversations too. It adds to the channels of conversation over and above email or phone and so on. So and of course you can share content that you produce. You can share content that you find and that is interesting. You can share a paper, you can share a news article, you can share a statistic, things that are relevant for your audience and that you find interesting. And before I move on, I actually like to mention a word about this presentation itself, this paper. So this framework was, as I mentioned, was developed by Jan Kitzman and his colleagues. You can access it through the traditional, academic papers route, academic journals route. So that's the reference at the top, at the right-hand corner here. Or the authors also made it available open access on their university's website. So that's the second reference. And they wrote blogs about it, so just capturing the essence of the paper in very accessible language. And they produced a video, an animated video with the key ideas. So this paper is actually a brilliant example of how we enter the new age, new forms of sharing our content and breaking the shackles from traditional academic journals, and reaching out to wider audiences, both academic and business, and students. So three, not both, three audiences there. So how exactly can then we use, so what tools are available out there and how can they be used to perform these functions: identity, present, relationships, reputation, groups, conversations, and sharing? Well, one of the tools out there, and this is my main tool, this is the one that I use the most, is Twitter. So as you will see here on the top right, you establish your profile. I really recommend that you have a picture and that you use the same or a very similar picture across all your social media platforms. You choose a handle, so that's the name here with the @ and so this is what could be like your phone number if you want to do it that way. And I do recommend that you choose a short name, the shortest possible that makes sense for you. And this is because in a message, a tweet is only 140 characters long. So in my case here, my handle has 7. If I had chosen a handle that had, say, Ana Domingos Canhoto or something like that, that had, let's imagine, 14 or something characters, I would be already taking 10% of the allowance on just a name. So make it easy for people to remember you and make it easy for people to mention you by keeping a short handle. You can have a name itself as long as you want to, but keep a short handle. And then you have, I think it's 160 characters to tell a little bit about you. So here you can tell what you're good at, what are your interests. Again, please don't say you're a guru, but whatever interests, to let people understand a bit about you. I recommend that you have you add a link to where people can find more information about you. So add your own website, maybe your institution's website staff page, or your LinkedIn profile, or if you create an about.me page if you have one. So then you will you can identify yourself. You can establish your presence by saying I am at the Academy of Management conference using the hashtag. You can find people, relate to them, establish connections. You can join discussions. So in my case, I often join the hashtag ACWrite discussion group about academic writing or others. And of course, you can share content. That's a great resource. I also created some lists, so here on the left, though I must admit I have been a bit bad at updating them. But this is another interesting feature. So you can create lists of people with similar interests, say family, marketing, business, personal, I don't know, running. So I like running. I could have a list of people who like running and who talk about running. And then you can select who you listen to. It's a bit like channels on a radio station. You can select whose updates you check at particular points in time. Creating lists is interesting also because others can subscribe to your list. So it's a way of again creating a list of people that others may want to follow. So again, establishing a reputation, sharing interesting people you know. So what other tools do I use? The second tool I use the most and that I really enjoyed it's blogging. As I was saying, I really enjoy blogging. It's a great way of expressing myself. I like that it allows me to say a bit more than a tweet. So if there is an issue in the news that interests me, for instance, here on the right, I talked about Ryanair hiring a customer service director. So I felt that a tweet was not enough. I wrote a short piece commenting on this piece of news. So it allows me to elaborate on something that I find interesting, but equally I'm not restrained by the timelines and the rules and whatever of my institution. It gives me a lot more freedom, and it also allows me to see who is looking for me, who is finding me, and where do they come from, and how do they find me. So in my blog, about blogging, you can use WordPress. It's free. It's very easy. You can I registered my domain. It's not expensive, but you don't have to. You can have a WordPress free domain, so you don't have to spend any money there. You can tell people how to find you. All right. A little bit about you. I share links to my papers and my conference presentations, and then I blog. Personally, I will comment on news, such as the 2 pieces here that are relevant for marketing, or especially for my area of customer management and customer profiling. And then mostly what I like to do is an interesting paper that I'm reading, I will kind of translate it for a wider audience. If I'm reading a paper, these people hear about how we celebrate Christmas, religious festivals around the world. So what is the issue? What are the key findings? I skipped the methodology section. What are the key findings and what does this mean for other researchers or managers? I usually mention more the managers angle. I also share, for instance, information about what content that I produce. So I went to this presentation, I delivered this presentation for a community here in Oxford. They produced the video, so I shared the video here on my website for those that did not attend the session. So you see, at the session there were maybe 30 people, 40 people. I shared this here. I think it's been seen a lot more than just the 30 or 40 people that were at the event. And of course, I tweet about my papers. So just like I do for other academic papers, I took this paper that I wrote with Jan Kitzman. After it was published, I wrote a very brief description of what was the issue, what we found, and how this is relevant for academic marketing. For marketing managers. So again, extending the reach of your research and disseminating research, yours and other people's. I also follow many other blogs. Personally, I use a tool called Feedly to organize my links, but there are many others that you may want to look into. So if I find an interesting blog, I copy the link and I come to this tool and I paste the link. And then every day I can see what others are writing about. Just like I check my email inbox, I can check my Feedly. I can scroll. Some of them I just read quickly. So maybe these on that right hand, I'll just read very quickly. Here's on this side, I try to comment, not always, but I sometimes leave a short comment. But it's really to know what others are thinking and doing and writing about. If you'd like to have a go at blogging, but are a bit daunted by the idea of doing it yourself full time, then you can write for other blogs, for curated blogs. There are several blogs that take content from other people. For instance, PhD to Published is a blog about academic writing and academic publishing, and they have lots of different authors writing about developing a paper, reviewing a paper, developing a pitch for a book, and so on. So it's a great website to get you started, for instance. Or if you like to write about digital research, maybe you'd like to write for a website that I curate together with my colleagues Sarah Quinton and Paul Jackson at Oxford Brookes University. So we have this. We created this website to bring together businesses and practitioners, academics and practitioners interested in digital and how it impacts on business, how it impacts on research, how it impacts on industry and behaviors. So if you are interested in the topic, you'd like to write a short piece, please, we would love to have your article on our blog. There is also a bit on a different area, but that again might be relevant for you, you may want to consider, is the website The Conversation. The Conversation is, so you have academics writing articles either about their research, so disseminating their research for a wider audience, much like you would find in the science section of The Guardian or the BBC, or even The Economist. So kind of the relevance of their research for a wider audience is a short piece about it, or they will comment on something that is happening in the news. The thing here, the special characteristic of The Conversation is that you write the article, but then it is heavily edited by The Conversation's own staff. So I suppose people with a science communication background, they will heavily edit your article to make it more readable and accessible. And however, only your name shows up, the name of the other person doesn't. I know this is common practice in news outlets. It's not what usually happens in academia, and personally I'm not very comfortable with this, but there you go. It's something you may want to have a go. Certainly reaches a really, really wide and diverse audience. So in addition to Twitter and blogging, there's also LinkedIn. So in LinkedIn, you create your profile, you connect with people you've met. It's a great way to stay in touch with alumni, for instance. But you need, and of course, let others know what you do and what you're good at. But I think there is more to that. For instance, if you are on LinkedIn, you regularly receive an update about job changes. You know how people in your network, they have either changed organizations or they've been promoted to a new job. And you know how when you go to a conference and you exchange emails and then you don't talk for 2 years, and then you'd really like to reach out to that person, but you think, oh, I haven't talked in 2 years. This is really awkward. Well, LinkedIn really helps you here, because through these updates, no, if there is an update, I haven't seen this particular person in several years, maybe 10 years, but they just wrote that they've been promoted to a new job within the same organization. You can go there quickly in less than 2 minutes on a Saturday morning and say, hey, congratulations on your new job, or fantastic, or whatever. Just very short piece of information. You keep the relationship warm, you keep the connection alive, and then if you need this person, or if that person needs you, it's so much easier to stay in touch. So equally, it helps others stay in touch with you and reach out to you if they need you. Another interesting feature of LinkedIn is these groups here. So you can join groups with people with similar interests that you have. So I personally created this page here for the masters that I lead, but I also joined this group here talking about issues around higher education, or this is a local network of professionals here in mobile marketing and mobile communications. Social media, and many others. So you have a summary of what are the issues being discussed in the group. So you know who is interested in this topic, what are people interested about. You can join discussions, you can share content. It's a way of finding people with similar interests. Do I use Facebook? I only use Facebook to interact with students, both current and potential. That's really how I use it. So I created the page for the masters, the program that I lead, and then through this page I had people contact me asking about the program. So potential students. I share information about just updates about the guest speakers that we have. I share information about information events that we have, and you'll see these little is so easy, so quick, so and reaches out, and it helps expand the word, share the word about your program. So for instance, this page here, we have about 90 people on the page, 90 likes, and yet this post has reached 255 people because they either commented or they shared the content. And it was so easy. It took me literally half a minute to upload this picture, maybe. And I shared, and I had more because of these people heard about the masters, and maybe they will join us, or they will be interested in Oxford Brookes University and want to know what is done here, find the researcher, one of my colleagues or myself. So it's so easy, and it's again a way of reaching out. I also run short competitions to help keep students engaged, just create a community spirit. And there's, of course, content, allow others to share content. So there are some job opportunities. This is one of our students. She shared a funny video from marketing. One of our PhD students tried to recruit participants on his PhD survey. This is a student of ours that was about to join us, so he wanted to reach out and interact with others that were going to join the course at the same time. Now, Wikipedia. I suppose that Wikipedia is the tool that we academics love to hate, and with good reason, because the content is a lot of times it's very poor quality. It links and it's very biased, or there is wrong information, and so on. However, it is true that students and business and many other people alike, even journalists, whatever, they go on Twitter as a first port of call about lots of information. And maybe, so let me say, what's happened is that a former student of mine dropped me a message saying, hey Anna, I found a paper of yours on Wikipedia, and lo and behold, when I linked, somebody, not me, had added this reference on the topic about social media. Now, electronic word of mouth. So you see, if this person found me, it was because he, who is a business manager, was using Wikipedia to quickly find information about electronic word of mouth. Now, if people are using social media, are using Wikipedia, and there is poor quality content, maybe personally I feel that we as academics have a duty, instead of moaning about this, we have a duty of improving the quality of the content on Wikipedia. So somebody who was very kindly added a link to my paper. But what I found in the meantime is that for other topics, I'm now writing a paper about sentiment analysis. I went to Wikipedia, I read the page on sentiment analysis, and it's quite poor in terms of references. It links to commercial sources, for instance, highly biased commercial sources, outdated statistics. So when I finish this paper and I submit it, I think I will go back and add one of the academic references that I read and that I'm using in my paper. I will add it here. And if all of us, if we did this for every paper we submit, if we added a good quality academic reference to Wikipedia, then we could help improve the quality of Wikipedia, of this resource that so many use. So that's maybe some food for thought there, encouragement for you to use Wikipedia and contribute to content. Another tool that I like to use and I really recommend is Slideshare. I recommend because it's a very easy way of sharing, increasing the reach of the content that you create. So how many of us go to conferences or go to guest talks? We spend hours and hours and hours preparing a presentation, and then we deliver it to 20, 30 people, and that's it, really. So you can take that presentation without any additional work at all and share it here. And first, you add value to the community and increase the reach of your work. So, for instance, this first one here on the left-hand corner is that talk I mentioned before that I did for a community here in Oxford. About 30 people, I think. I can't remember exactly, but about 30 people in the room. I put the presentation here. It took me hours and hours and hours to prepare it. About 40 minutes presentation. I uploaded here. It reached 637 people. It's a lot more than the ones that were in the room, and it didn't cost me anything else. There was absolutely no work at all added to it, and I added value to others. This one, I went to a conference. This one here, for instance, I prepared for my students. So again, you prepare for your students. It's a 1-hour session. No one sees it again. Why not share it with the wider community? Look at this one here. It's one I prepared for an event at my institution. 1,408 views. It's a great way of, again, establishing your reputation, sharing content, and creating relationships. You can also produce very simple, easy videos with your materials. So in this particular case, I'm using ScreenFlow, so exactly the same process and the same software I'm using to produce the video that you're watching now. Use ScreenFlow. You have a slide, a PowerPoint set. You click through your slides. You talk over. You just speak about the slides. You produce the video with minimum effort, and again, you increase the reach of your audience, of your work. And people like to consume videos. They like visual input, so use it. Some people use animated content. I'm not that talented. I don't have the budget, but it's a brilliant way of reaching out through animation. And you can create your own channel if you are that productive. This is an amazing channel. I really like the work of these academic based in New York. He produces short videos about chemistry. He usually makes videos here from his own bedroom, very simple ones, and he talks about chemistry. Makes concepts very simple, and it links them to popular science or popular events that are happening in a wider environment. So, for instance, here he looked at the Breaking Bad series, where the main character is supposed to be trying to create a sort of recreational drug, and he commented on the chemistry behind the development of that drug and whether that was possible or not to create the product that the character was. It was possible to do what the character was trying to do in the series. If you don't like a video or it's too complicated, you can produce podcasts. So that's sound only. There are lots and lots and lots of great podcasts out there, but I would like to highlight these two. So the first one on the left is produced by Dan Ariely, the professor of behavioral economics. He's a famous author, is a very well-established researcher, and he has a series of podcasts, short podcasts, where he interviews other academics about their work. HBR IdeaCast is a very similar idea, just that they interview authors that have published on Harvard Business Review, very short audio interviews about their papers, 10 minutes, I think, one every other week, something like that. Very simple idea, very effective idea. You can have that. You can do your own series of podcasts. Is this too much? Use images, use cartoons. It's ways of using the tools that your audience uses. So my friend here, Inês, she's a human biologist based at Loughborough University. And instead of writing a long blog post telling us that she was going to do some field work and she had just a yellow fever jab in order to go into Mexico, and she was struggling, well, she produced this short cartoon with bit strips, a free application, and she used this to update information. So fun, different, effective. We need to go beyond the lengthy papers and with very complicated words. What other resources may you want to take into consideration? The Women's Room is a database of female experts on many different topics. So it was created because they felt that there wasn't enough presence of female experts in the media. So if you go to the news, Newsnight, whatever, you usually see men being interviewed. So and journalists say, oh, I don't know where there aren't enough experts, I don't know where they are. So they created this database. I would really encourage you to add your details there. It makes it easy for journalists to find you or conference organizers to find you. I have been contacted through this resource. I really recommend it. Quora is a question and answer website. So I can go there and say, does anyone know how to do? Can anyone recommend the software to do sentiment analysis, for instance? And then people will give me recommendations. So you can use Quora in two ways. You can either post your own question, or you can monitor topics that are of interest to you, or people that are of interest to you. You can monitor them, and so you receive alerts whenever a question is written by that person or around that topic, and then you can again know what's being discussed and contribute to the discussion if you wish to. Jelly here, it's again a question and answer resource, but it's based on images, but it's the same principle. The resource here on the right is a discussion forum for researchers, and it's about research methods. So you can write your own questions, or you can answer questions around many different issues about research methods. If you are an academic, you also want to create your profile on Academiaedu. So similarly to LinkedIn, you say, what's your name, where are you working, expertise, and then you share information about your publications and links to the journal website, for instance. So other people can find you. You can find other people, again, like LinkedIn. But the additional feature that this resource has, and that may be of interest to you, is the ability to monitor who is looking at your profile, who is downloading your papers, where do they come from, how did they find you? Did they find you by name? Did they find by a particular keyword, or where do they come from and how do they find you? Another resource similar to Academiaedu is ResearchGate. So again, you can create profiles and so on, but this one has another interesting feature. You can choose to follow, so you identify people whose work you like, you can follow them, and then whenever they have an update, you get a notification. So for instance, I like the work of this author. He writes about topics that are relevant to my own research. So whenever he publishes a new paper, I have information and I can go and check it. Of course, in an ideal world, I would read all the tables of contents of all the journals in my area, but we don't have time for that, and we do end up often using the work of authors whose work we like or whose work we trust, and this is just a way of making it easier to find those authors. Conversely, If people follow you, they will know every time you publish a paper. So again, it's a way of increasing the reach of your paper and the likelihood that somebody will read it and will cite it. So if you are a bit confused and you're thinking, oh, so many tools, where do I start? What do I do? I'm a bit scared now. I would say don't despair. Remember, there are many functions. You don't need to use all the tools, and you don't use the tools for everything. But do start small. Don't try to play around with all these tools at the same time. Start with one. Now, it may be scary, but if you start with one, it's perfectly doable. And once you're comfortable, move on to the next one. If you are absolutely new to social media, I would encourage you to start using a LinkedIn group. I think you find one in your area. It's not scary at all. It's not difficult at all to add this to the discussion. And it's a way of both establishing a reputation and creating relationships and joining. And you don't feel that it's not so noisy because it's a group that interests you. Once you're comfortable with that, create a Twitter page, and of course, write your profile on academia.edu or ResearchGate. What I would say is that we need to fish where the fish are. Sorry for the cheesy picture here on the left-hand corner, but that's the idea, isn't it? We may not like Wikipedia. I may not be comfortable with. I may not like the idea of Wikipedia. Maybe you don't want to use Facebook. But if your students, if managers are using Wikipedia, then maybe we need to consider Wikipedia, we need to consider Facebook, and we need to consider more visual ways of delivering our content. The other point I'd like to mention here on the right is that we need to adapt to the characteristics of each platform. So, for instance, on Twitter, so all of these social media platforms, they will have very accessible language. Say, teach the technical terms, teach the titles, use images because it's what people like, what people use. Create links. So, for instance, if I'm talking about a paper, if I'm in an academic discussion forum, or if I'm talking about an Academiaedu, I may link to the journal. But if I'm blogging about it, or if it's on Twitter, I will not link to the journal because the majority of the users cannot access the journal. The journal is behind a paywall, a very expensive paywall. I'm not going to link to there. I link to a blog post, or I link to the slide set on Slideshare. So adapt to the different environments, adapt your style and what you share according to the different environments. First of all, you need to make yourself accessible. People need to be able to find you. You need to have contact information. Do use similar pictures and usernames across all platforms. I would encourage you to teach the titles. I know we are used to using the doctors and the professors, but social media is a very democratic environment, and I'll just use your name. I think it's the best way. And you can, if you're worried about your reputation and your credibility, you can access it you establish that through the content that you share. But it's personal. It depends on the cultures. In addition to making yourself accessible, make your work accessible. Share links, tell people what you've done, make it easy to find through the addition of keywords and labels and tags, and communicate in a very accessible language in a straightforward way. A blog post is typically around 300, 500 pages. Words. Don't get scared there. So 300 words is like an abstract. It's like a large, little bit bigger than the typical abstract. So just go straight to the point, simple language, very accessible. And don't worry about how many followers you have. Don't worry about how many comments your blog gets. Just focus on quality. You may have 20 followers. That's great, but connect with them, share their content, comment on their content. It doesn't matter if you have 2,000 followers. Don't worry about that at all. And at the end of the day, be nice. It's a very small world. You will end up, if you meet somebody online, share useful content, leave a nice comment on their blog, or react to what they share. It's a small world. You will meet face to face. If you don't meet, you can. I've developed a paper with someone I met on Twitter. It's now under review in a nice journal, and we never met personally. So be nice and develop your network. I hope this has been useful. Do let me know if this can be useful. What are the resources you use, and how more ideas for using social media in research. Thank you, and Goodbye.